Awesome. Well, yeah, so it's a few minutes after, so we can go ahead and get started here. My name is Alicia Cox. Thank you all for joining us for our fall stakeholder meeting. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. It's been actually, I think, a couple years since we've really held a kind of formal stakeholder meeting just because of COVID. And our original intent for this meeting was for it to take place in person in Jackson, but with the new Delta variant, we felt more comfortable moving online, as a lot of things have. So as far as Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities, I noticed a few new names. So just want to give a little bit of background on our organization. We are a nonprofit and we're based in Jackson, Wyoming, but we serve the whole greater Yellowstone region. And we're actually the only coalition located in Wyoming and Montana. So we serve sometimes the whole states and also kind of the Idaho Falls area in Idaho. And we advance alternative fuels in the transportation sector and also work in energy efficient mobility systems. And I feel like I didn't put slides up for this, so I'm just kind of, I might be forgetting a few things, but thank you for being here. You'll hear a little bit more from me later when I talk about some funding. So, but I think I might just leave it at a short introduction about our coalition. And as far as a stakeholder meeting, the purpose of our stakeholder meetings is we traditionally have rotated around the region and hosted in person in each state at different seasons. And so we keep trying to host one in Jackson. It's Jackson's turn, but and then we traditionally have speakers from the city or the state that we're presenting or we're located in. So, and the reason is so folks can understand what others are doing in regards to transportation and alternative fuels, and perhaps be inspired or work together on future projects. So I'm hoping you all will get something great out of this, and it will help advance even more alternative fuel projects and transportation projects in the region. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to end my little intro now, and I'm going to move on into our first agenda item here. So we are going to be hearing from Teton County. We're hearing from Heather Overholser. She is the Public Works Director for Teton County. She's going to let us know about the BUILD grant and all the projects that they're working on with that. And then shortly after Heather, we'll be hearing from Jared Smith, the START Board Director, about some of the recent advancements at START. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Heather. Oh, and we also are recording this, just so everybody's aware of that. And we'll be posting, breaking this up into different segments for our website, but just so everyone's aware it's recorded and you can view later or share with others. So go ahead and take it away, Heather.
Great, thank you so much, Alicia. My name is Heather Overholser. I am Director of Public Works for Teton County, Wyoming. And I'm really glad to be here today. Good to see you all. Thanks for having me. And also with me is Jared Smith. Jared is the board chair of START, Southern Teton Area Rapid Transit. I'm going to buzz through the information on BUILD rather quickly so that most of our time can be spent focusing on transit and answering your questions. Next slide, please. So Teton County, representing 6 project partners in both Idaho and Wyoming, was awarded a federal BUILD transportation infrastructure grant in 2020. For those of you who aren't familiar, BUILD stands for Better Utilizing Investments to Leverage Development. It used to be called TIGER. Now it is called RAISE, so it gets quite confusing, but our grant was awarded in 2020 and it is officially a BUILD grant. The partners that we're working with are the town of Jackson, Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, the city of Driggs, Idaho, Teton County, Idaho, and the Idaho Transportation Department. And the town of Jackson includes START. And the transportation projects that the grant is supporting are collectively known as the Teton Mobility Corridor Improvements. Next slide, please. So the projects include, and there are 13 different project components, the Stilson Transit Center. This is located at Stilson Ranch, right at the intersection of Wyoming 22 and Wyoming 390, or the Teton Village Road, Moose Wilson Road, also known as. The Driggs Transit Center, Phase 2, the 5th Street Park and Ride in Driggs. These are all serviced by START and also Grand Targhee Transportation. The Wilson to Stilson Pathway. This is an expansion of the pathway system in Teton County. The pathway from Driggs to the airport. Again, expansion of pathway Teton County, Idaho. Segment 2 of the Teton Pass Trail. Segment 1 is currently being constructed. Very exciting. Transit signal prioritization for START it will be a new signal at 390 and Beckley Parkway at the Stilson Transit Center, as well as 11 or 12 others signals throughout the Jackson Hole community. 4 new regional commuter buses, 2 new electric buses for the local routes, and safety and multimodal transportation upgrades in Wilson on Wyoming 22, and then also in Idaho on Idaho 33. Next slide, please.
And Heather, I think you're out of sequence by 1 slide. So now, yeah.
No, I think I'm good.
We were seeing 2 slides at a time.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jared. Yeah, this is slide 4. So this is just a map to show you the locations of these different projects, and they're all located along the Wyoming 22, Idaho 33 corridor. So connecting the communities of Driggs, Victor, Jackson, Tetonia, Wilson, Teton Village. And then many of the pathway projects, as it says on this slide, are part of the Greater Yellowstone Trail, which connects this whole area from Driggs and Victor and Wilson and Jackson and Teton Village. Next slide, please. The grant totals $20 million, and that's for all of the 13 project components. Teton County and project partners will be reimbursed by BUILD at about 76% of the estimated project costs. And Teton County hired Jorgensen Associates and their team of sub-consultants to provide grant administration and management services, as well as take each individual project component through planning, NEPA, design, construction, and everything in between. And this program will offer improved travel choices, connections for transit, expanded pathway system, and safer highways for all travelers. Next slide, please. In terms of community benefits, there are a multitude of benefits that will be realized once these BUILD projects are completed. And we have until 2027 to complete. Our funds will be obligated sometime in 2022, the latest September of 2022, and then we'll have 5 years thereafter. And the benefits include expanded, faster, more convenient, and more reliable transit service, improved safety and mobility in downtown Wilson, on Idaho 33 and on the Old Jackson Highway near Victor. And lastly, more expansive pathway connections. These will all serve residents and visitors alike and help reduce the traffic congestion, which we are all too familiar with. Next slide, please. And so now I will turn it over to Jared to talk more specifically about the Stilson Transit Center and START initiatives, but I just want to give a shout out to all of the partners within this project. We have our project leads, all of whom I've kind of mentioned, and then we have many partnering entities such as Friends at Pathways, Wyoming Pathways, and others that have all been critical to the success thus far of this project. And we're only at the beginning, but it's been a great partnership and working together and bringing all of these communities and these 2 states together. So Jared, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Heather. As Heather mentioned, I'm Jared Smith. I am a transportation planner engineer by background and mostly retired, and then volunteer board chair for START. I see Wes Gardner, who's also on the START board, is on the call. I was going to focus on the Stilson Transit Center as part of the build grant, and then just touch on some of the START priorities that we're working on right now and on the near-term horizon. The Stilson Transit Center is one of the central parts of the build grant. And what it will involve is taking the existing Stilson remote parking lot that the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort owns and the Teton Village Association operates, and it will formalize a publicly owned park and ride on a portion of the lot. And right now, the overall parking area accommodates up to 1,300 vehicles for peak periods of the ski season. And what the Stilson Transit Center portion of the build grant will do will construct a new transit center. And I'll show you an example of what that might look like. And then a park and ride with over 400 parking stalls. And it will be landscaped, have some level of lighting, and the details are yet to be worked out as part of the build grant effort. But you can see in plan view the concept that was identified in the build grant application that was developed in cooperation with the mountain resort. And so this will also interconnect the pathways coming from Wilson, both existing to the north, and then also the new pathway that will come along Highway 22 on the south side of Highway 22 and cross under 22 at Stilson. One of the areas that we want to be really sensitive to is the proposed implementation of wildlife crossings that are part of the overarching master plan, and make sure that we're dealing with wildlife permeability in this overall Stilson site. It will also include a new signal at the intersection of Beckley Boulevard and the Moose Wilson Road just north of the Highway 22 intersection. And the idea there is that right now, transit is kind of stuck waiting to get in and out of that lot, especially during peak periods. And this will give a signal for general purpose traffic, but it will also give priority to transit. So as a transit vehicle approaches, it will automatically allow for a green or a left turn into or out of the parking area. And the facility itself will include bike parking. It will also have 6 transit bays for the different routes, including commuter routes that would be coming over from Driggs and Victor. And then the proposed Teton Village to Stilson shuttle that would operate during the peak months in the winter. Targeted construction is 2024, 2025. It would be coincident with the reconstruction of the intersection at 22 and 390. So we're trying to coordinate that in terms of staging, and also potentially having YDOT actually build the signal and any channelization at the intersection as part of their project at the northern limits of their project. The town of Jackson and START are the lead for this. Teton County will actually own the underlying property, and this is a huge shout out to the mountain resort. They, as part of their contribution, are going to contribute the underlying property as a contribution that will then count towards our local match in fulfilling the bill grant requirements. And the overall estimated cost is on the order of 8.7 million. And that includes the donation of the underlying land. So next slide. This is an example, and the idea for this came out of the development of our START route plan, which I'll be talking about in a minute. This is an example from Tahoe, a transit center that was built there, and you can see off in the distance in the upper left photo the park and ride associated with that. This is a 6-bay transit center that includes bathrooms, a heated waiting area with windows that then open for summer use. It would have likely a kind of an information kiosk inside. If you're familiar with the existing small transit facility at Stilson, there's a small kind of open window area inside. Sorry, if you go back.
Oh, shoot.
Anyway, there would be a kiosk there, and for information or serving hot chocolate or coffee. And then it would also incorporate bike storage, potentially a bike corral, given the demand that we are anticipating for bikes at this area, and electric charging stations probably for both bikes and vehicles. And then potentially, other kind of community focused benefits, like maybe some history kiosks, things like that. So this is just an example of what we had thought about in the build grant. And the architect is already selected as part of the team, and concepts will be developed. So before I go to the overarching start conversation, any questions on the Stilson Transit Center, or the other components of the build grant I can talk about in a minute, which include transit signal priority at the I think, is that on the next slide? Maybe we should go there. No, I guess not. Anyway, we're including transit signal priority at all signals in Teton County, with particular focus on the signals that START operates through. And the idea there is that a transit vehicle approaches a signal, it would get a green light sooner. And this can also, the same technology can be used by emergency vehicles. So State Trooper, Teton County Fire, EMS, the Jackson Police would be able to use that same technology that the transit vehicles would be using. And then we also have included 4 new commuter buses and 2 all-electric buses. So any questions on that? And then I'll move on to just kind of the overarching START discussion. Okay.
It looks like there's one question about preferred locations for electric charging vehicles. So it looks like you mentioned that, but I guess maybe they're looking for where you think they might be located on the site.
Yeah, that's a detail yet to be worked out, but I'm assuming that there would be, probably typically the ones that are already installed, like at the ranch lot at the village, are up nearer to the warming area. And I'm assuming that that would be similar for this. And then for the bikes, they would probably be located in if there's a bike corral or integrated into bike locker storage. And I'm not sure that I can see that. I guess I can open the chat. Let's see. Yeah. So in terms of overall START board priorities in the near term, we're very excited about implementing Microtransit, which is on-demand service that would serve most of the town of Jackson from the START headquarters at Carnes Meadow Road, and then go all the way east to the town limits. And that would be on-demand, van-based, smaller vehicle-based service, where you would use an app, much like Uber or Lyft. And the goal is that within 10 minutes, the vehicle would be, come with the driver would bring you to your doorstep where you've called for the start of your trip. And then you would be able to go within that service area. And then if you're going outside the service area, the microtransit service area, you would be taken to the transfer point at Miller Park, or if we end up moving it, it would be at that transfer location for trips over to the village or commuter routes. So our hope is to we're actually in negotiations now. We've selected Downtowner as our service provider, and we're in negotiations now, and we plan to have that service up and running by the end of November for the winter season. We're assuming that we can deal with our driver shortage crisis, which is an ongoing issue, especially as we ramp into winter service. We want to increase our commuter routes to Teton Valley and Star Valley. and enhance Teton Village service. And then we're going to be reviewing whether Miller Park makes sense as the permanent transfer location. And then we'll be continuing to implement the other elements of the route plan. Next slide. So longer term, we're continuing to look at different funding options. We also are looking to working with Teton County and the town and other regional jurisdictions, including Idaho and down in Lincoln County, to look at creation of a regional transportation planning organization, or there's a typo there, it's an RTA, Regional Transit Authority, that would operate across the state lines into Teton County, Idaho, and down into Lincoln County. And that's a longer term initiative that was identified in the county integrated transportation plan. We're also hoping that we can work in partnership with YDOT to implement HOV lanes on Highway 22 between Jackson and 390 Stilson, so that transit vehicles and carpools can get out of the existing congested traffic and actually have a travel time advantage, which will greatly enhance demand for transit if we can actually provide travel time advantage over single occupant vehicles that are just caught in the congested traffic. So this would be likely part of the NEPA analysis, which is currently slated to begin in 2024. We at START and many in the Teton Transportation Coalition are hoping that YDOT will accelerate that planning process, given that we have a crisis already in the corridor in terms of just pretty much congested traffic, not even seasonally anymore. And I mentioned the transit signal priority signals throughout the county. And then we're also looking to expand our employer transit pass program. And then next big initiative is to provide service out to Rafter J, South Park, and Melody Ranch, so points south of town, and that is as part of our adopted plan. So we're working with those communities to identify the appropriate type of service out there. Next slide. We're also looking at increasing commuter service and enhancing winter service. We're looking at commuter van partnerships with both St. John's Hospital and the Mountain Resort, hoping to create a pilot program where we'd have commuter vans that would be using volunteer drivers or drivers that have a stipend that would pool together people on similar shifts, and then those same vans could potentially be used during the day for efforts like the proposed Teton Pass trail access for both winter and summer, and potentially used for trail access up into the park. So that's a concept that we're hoping to have further dialogue about, and what we're hoping is to get some grants, additional funding, and partner with some private entities like St. John's and the Mountain Resort or other employers. So any ideas you all have in that regard would be greatly appreciated. Also, as I mentioned, partnering with the Teton Backcountry Alliance on the FLAP grant that the county was awarded, which is looking at enhancing trailhead access across Teton Pass. And I think as we speak, representatives of the Federal Highway Administration are in town working on that. So we're looking forward to partnering on that. Next slide. And I've already mentioned these items, so next slide. So the route plan that has already been adopted by the START board, the town and county, is what we're in the middle of implementing. And that's where some of these build grant and other efforts were identified. The overall goal is to get more efficiency out of the existing budget and service. So you're starting to see the changes last year, and they'll continue. We're providing higher frequency service to try to maximize ridership. adding the new routes south of town, implementing the microtransit. And with all of that adopted, prior to COVID, we were estimating an increase in ridership of 60%. And that's without any significant new revenue. And our hope is that with additional funding over the next years, we'll be even increasing that ridership and some of the other ideas that were identified in the longer range conversations. The goal obviously is reduce overall vehicles miles traveled. We're moving our fleet to an all-electric fleet. I think Wes could chime in, but I believe we're at somewhere near between 40 and 50% now, and we'll be increasing that. And our goal is, even with microtransit, to have electric vehicles eventually. Next slide. As I mentioned, we have selected Downtowner for the microtransit service, and it'll be an app-based system, very similar to what you might have used with Lyft or Uber. It will involve probably a few vehicles initially serving Jackson, and it should revolutionize transit service in East Jackson. And I think the idea will be that as it gains popularity, that we'll look to expand that type of service elsewhere within the system. And I think, is that the last slide? I believe so for us. Yep. So happy to entertain. I see a question there. Has there been any estimate of carbon emission reductions with these improvements? For the BUILD grant, there was, in our cost benefit analysis, an estimate. I believe that's true, Heather. And if you look in the actual application, I believe there's an appendix that identifies the benefits of the grant projects. And I believe that has some data on reduced carbon emissions. For the START route plan, I'm not sure that we actually did an analysis, but we can check on that.
And I can share those calculations in kind of our follow-up emails if people are interested in that.
Hey, Jared, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Wes Gardner. I just want to thank everybody for the great work on the BUILD grant. And for me, the Stilson, the opportunities that we have to unlock at Stilson could be really powerful for this community. You know, when you think about Stilson as a park and ride to the village, that's obviously something we all are familiar with. But when you think about Stilson as a park and ride to town, then you can really get excited operationally about putting people on the dead legs of trips that are already running, capacity that already exists in the system. So I'm just really excited about Stilson and the opportunities that come with being able to make that a park and ride for not only the village, but also for town. I just want to thank everybody for getting that done. It seemed like a long shot at one point, and a lot of people on this call played major roles in getting it done. And just real excited about the potential to lower traffic on 22 there.
Yeah, and I should mention that what we're looking at is better connectivity all the way from Targhee through Driggs, integrating the Targhee shuttle, having real-time traveler information so that if you're going from any point in the region to another point, you can actually just go on an app and it will tell you, you need to take microtransit from here to the transfer point. Then you hop on this particular bus to either get over to Victor, Driggs, Star Valley, up to the village. There'll be enhanced or new stops in Wilson. And the hope is that Stilson will become a better utilized year-round facility rather than what it is right now, which is basically focused on the winter season. But like Wes said, it would become a West Bank remote parking lot that will hopefully get people, off the highway and into transit and other modes, and that will go a long way to both minimizing congestion and the air quality issues associated with that.
I have a question regarding the including charging stations into the Stilson Center. It looks to me that those weren't included in the actual application, and so I'm curious if there's still room for the program to receive funds from other grants or elsewhere to enable more charging for those bikes and vehicles, or if there does happen to already be funding there for those charging stations.
Yeah, the estimate was a very high level estimate. It didn't break it down to that level, but hopefully would allow for that. And if not, yes, absolutely, we're going to be bringing any grant source to bear. And Heather, you can probably talk about that more, because there are things that were not identified in the grant details that will be further fleshed out during the design over the next year or so. And that would be an example. And I think we'd welcome the idea of going after other grants to further enhance the program.
Absolutely. We already received, it's called 5304 funding. It's federal funding that's through WYDOT. It's for transit planning efforts. And so we've received funds over $200,000 through 5304 through WYDOT for the transit center planning. And like Jared said, the budget and also what was included in the application was very high level. And now we're going through the NEPA process right now, which is not covered by BUILD. So this money is going to come in very handy. And through that design process, we will be adding all different features like that, Alicia. But yes, we would be very open to having conversations about other funding sources for amenities like that I think would be a really great addition to this project.
Okay.
Yeah, and I should mention, we received a similar grant at START to look at planning for service out to the airport. And then potentially up into the parks. And we're in conversations with Grand Teton National Park. But just as an aside, I forgot to mention that during the earlier comments.
Great, that's wonderful. I know that's something a lot of people are thinking about. Well, we do have just a couple more minutes. Are there any other questions out there? You guys can just unmute yourself and ask if you do have a question.
Well, if not, we thank you for including us in the.
I'll jump in real quick.
Oh,
I'll jump
sorry.
in real quick.
Go ahead.
I'm sure everybody knows, but there's huge need in the park as well for transit as well as charging stations. So anything you can do on that front would be huge.
Yeah, there's been Chip Jenkins, who's the new superintendent of Grand Teton, comes from Mount Rainier. He also was instrumental in creating the Regional Transit Authority down in Yosemite. And so he's very familiar with transportation issues. I don't think you could have a better superintendent when it comes to transportation. They conducted a workshop that I participated in, as did a number of other folks. And they're looking very holistically at, first identifying, okay, what's the problem? It's a very unique situation in that the vast majority of people coming through, are not necessarily staying even in the park. And so how you capture them for looking at it from public transit side, it's a bit of a challenge. But yes, electric charging stations, I'm sure they're thinking about it. I don't have particular knowledge of it. There was this pilot program of autonomous vehicles up in Yellowstone that I guess didn't go so well this summer. And it just points out the challenges of using autonomous vehicles in kind of congested areas. I believe they're thinking about it, but I don't have direct knowledge. Maybe others do.
And Alicia, I just have one last update. I know we're running out of our
Oh,
time.
yeah. Great.
But the county and the town are in the process of, are in the hiring process for the regional transportation planning administrator position. And we're really excited to get that position filled and get going on aspects of the integrated transportation plan, including TDM programs and RTA, RTPO, pull them into some of this build grant work as it pertains to, you know, the overall transportation planning for the community and the region. And so we'll have more on that for all of you going forward.
Great. We'll definitely share that through our newsletter to our network.
And my last pitch would be just wearing my transit planner engineer hat. The most critical need in my mind in the Valley right now is that we move forward on the Highway 22 corridor and actually move forward the recommendation in the integrated transportation plan, which is to provide transit priority through the corridor with dedicated lanes for both transit and carpools. And we did a occupancy study the winter of last year that showed that we will be able to move, if we focus on moving people rather than vehicles, we'll be able to move a huge amount more of people through that corridor if we can just provide a dedicated lane and get them out of the congested, 2 lanes that are there.
Well, thank you. And then also just to speak to his question about Grand Teton National Park and charging stations, they are looking at that. And Margaret Wilson is a planner for the park, and she's a huge advocate for electric vehicles and infrastructure. It's just a matter of having the plans in place and the funding there, which will be probably coming through some of these federal bills that we'll be discussing in a little bit. Well, thank you both for discussing the build grant and START's plans for the future. They're both huge projects and undertakings, and the great partnerships came together to get all of these things going. So we appreciate you both taking the time to share this information with all of us, and we hope that we can continue to be engaged with efforts in the future. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You are very welcome. Thank you.